Good afternoon and welcome to South Elgin High School. I'm Suzanne Johnson, the Deputy Superintendent of Instruction, and it is our honor and pleasure to welcome Governor Pritzker to South Elgin High School and School District U46. Of course, we are a bit sad that our students are on spring break and our STORM students are unable to welcome Governor Pritzker today as we begin our time together. As the second largest district in the state of Illinois and one of the most diverse, our preschool through 12th grade students have benefited from Governor Pritzker's longtime dedication to expanding educational opportunities, particularly for our youngest learners and our families in need. And this past year has shown steadfast dedication, stellar communication, and transparency through frequent press briefings as well as updates from Governor Pritzker's office and collaboration with our state health and education leaders. In School District U46, where we cite 103 home languages and more than a third of our students are English language learners and more than 60% of our students are from low-income families, we have greatly appreciated the support and the flow of federal and state funds to support teaching and learning. We simply would not have been able to provide the following resources for more than 37,000 students for this past year. We have provided over 5 million curbside meals. We have moved to a one-to-one district for pre-K through 12th grade students. We have provided professional development and resources that are state-of-the-art for our teachers to meet the needs of our diverse and distance and in-person learners. Additionally, as observed here at South Elgin High School today, we have provided a variety of signage, PPE, and hand washing and sanitizing stations to keep everyone safe as we return to learn. And thus, it is my pleasure and my honor today to thank Governor Pritzker for his work on behalf of all of U46 students and to welcome him to South Elgin High School today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Superintendent Johnson, and thanks to all of the leaders here at U46, here at South Elgin High, and throughout the state, people who have stood up in the most difficult circumstances to make sure that our kids are getting educated as best we can in the worst pandemic that this nation, this world really has ever seen. The Elgin Area School District has had the immense responsibility of guiding 37,000 students and their families through learning in the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, the leadership, the communications to parents, to all the stakeholders in our schools has been exceptional here at U46. I also want to offer my appreciation to our elected leaders, to Senator Karina Villa, and to Representative Maura Hirschauer for all that they do on behalf of the school district, which is the second largest school district in our state. After a year of battling the impact of COVID-19 on our schools and our families and our children, we're here today to talk about how we can best support our students. That's why I'm very proud to be here with so many leaders who are committed to education, and that includes the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Illinois, Juliana Stratton, our State Superintendent of Education, Dr. Carmen Ayla, Ernesto Matias and Irma Snopek with the Illinois State Board of Education, Dr. Jamila Jordan, Executive Director of the Governor's Office on Early Childhood Development, Dr. Brian Durham, the Executive Director of the Illinois Community College Board, Ginger Ostro, the Executive Director of the Illinois Board of Higher Education, Eric Zarnikow, the Executive Director of ISAC, and Melissa Figuera, who's representing Advance Illinois. I also want to offer my thanks to the entire P12 Council, whose members have spent countless hours building a guide brimming with ideas for our K-12 institutions, our early learning providers, and our higher education schools. We're all here today because of the tremendous challenges that this pandemic has created for every child in this state. If you're a parent, I know you've spent most of this pandemic worried about how your kids are learning, with all the screens and the Zooms. Sometimes you're worried about whether they're learning at all. To say nothing of the most constant worry, how will this pandemic impact their future? If you're an educator, I know that you've had to invent new ways to teach, having virtual dance parties to keep kids engaged, visiting the front lawns of your students, dropping off packets of material to help kids who need it. I know that you're working very hard and may have some pandemic fatigue, and I know that through it all, you're always trying to do what's best for your students, and I really do want to express my gratitude to people who serve in the teaching profession. If you're a school administrator or a local elected official, I know that you've spent most of this pandemic making sure that kids are fed, helping to find innovative resources for teachers to adapt their teaching and finding resources to expand broadband access or obtain new devices for the students who didn't have one to begin with. Over the last year, I've spoken with so many of you who are so worried about what the future may hold now. We're here today to take a little bit of that worry off your plates. I'm very pleased to announce that thanks to the American Rescue Plan, about $7 billion will be available over the next 3 years to renew K-12 learning for Illinois students, an unparalleled influx of resources with which we can truly do right by our students. With these enormous new resources comes the great challenge that most districts have never had to face: how to avoid having the last 12 months become the lost year for our students. To revitalize learning and teaching for students and educators, our response must be intensive, holistic, and practical. That's why my administration and the P20 Council are supporting districts and schools with a 180-page guide to assist in this all-hands-on-deck effort. The Learning Renewal Resource Guide isn't a substitute for local ideas and homegrown initiatives, but it is an expert compendium of some of the best ways to renew learning, whether it's academic and behavioral counseling, out-of-classroom experiences like high-value tutoring, after-school programs and summer camps, or creating individualized student profiles to craft the best plans for all students. This living document serves as a starting point to our ongoing conversations about how to best meet students and educators where they are. Most importantly, the Illinois Learning Renewal Resource Guide recognizes that there's no one-size-fits-all solution for the thousands of schools that span our almost 58,000 square miles of Illinois. But it does guide every district through the best ways to embrace their students after this long period of disruption. I also want to say this: things like tutoring, extended hours, or intensive mental health services are all expensive programs that might be tough to fund in a normal year. But this is not a normal year. These federal resources make it possible for districts to make significant investments that were otherwise out of reach. So it's essential that we take full advantage of this moment for our children. If you're a parent, a student, or an educator and want to read the guide or to learn more about these ideas, please visit the Illinois P20 Council website. I'm also encouraging districts to invite teachers, students, and community organizations like libraries or nonprofits, local government leaders, and of course, parents themselves into this conversation. It took a village to raise a child before the pandemic turned life upside down. So the best thing that we can do now is engage the whole village in helping the children process the experience and restore the learning. In addition to the work at the district level, I'm also launching 4 new initiatives at the state level to provide guidance and support in some of the most critically important aspects of learning renewal. First, high-impact tutoring. with a focus on aligning tutoring with classroom instruction throughout the school year and during the summer. Next, social and emotional learning, with partners including the Center for Childhood Resilience at Lurie Children's Hospital. Next, interim assessment guidance, so educators can best target students' needs without holding the assessment results over anyone's heads. And lastly, bridge transition support to encourage enrollment in both early childhood programs and in higher education. The last year has been incredibly difficult for everyone. Teachers working tirelessly to adapt to remote learning. Parents gave their all to guiding their children through challenges that no one ever saw coming. And of course, our kids watched their day-to-day be usurped by a pandemic, a traumatic experience for any adult to have to navigate, let alone a child. During this pandemic, Illinois led the nation in supporting our families. No state invested as much in keeping early childhood centers open as Illinois did. No state invested as much in housing assistance so that vulnerable families didn't have to worry about living on the streets. And as we recover from this pandemic, I'm committed to making sure that we continue to lead the nation, this time in assisting our schools to make this new $7 billion count over the next several years to overcome the pandemic's effects on our students, on our parents, and on our educators. And with that, I'm very proud to turn it over to my partner in governance, someone who has done an outstanding job for the families of Illinois, especially kids, and that's our Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratton.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Governor Pritzker, for your decisive leadership throughout this pandemic. You have remained committed to the science and the data, and you never view Illinoisans as spreadsheets or graphs. You always see the very real and increasing needs of our families and communities, and yes, our students, and you are focused on solutions. Deputy Superintendent Johnson, thank you, and to the entire team here at South Elgin High School for hosting us today. I am absolutely inspired to be here with my former colleagues and friends of the Illinois General Assembly and our state's education leaders and P20 Learning Renewal co-chairs, all of whom have already been acknowledged by the governor. Thank you for your visionary and compassionate leadership and your presence here today. The Illinois Learning Renewal Resource Guide is really like a toolbox filled with the very best ideas and strategies and solutions for helping to support our students, educators, and families as we all recover from this pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused us all to be flexible in ways that we never could have expected. And just as we have had to adapt, the resource guide must also be viewed as a living document that can evolve as the needs of our students evolve. In fact, we encourage feedback on the guide from all of our stakeholders as to how it's being used throughout the state. And in response, we will be updating the guide as we learn more about what these strategies look like in practice. Moreover, the state will be available to provide support and technical assistance as districts implement these strategies. And this is only all possible because of the collaborative nature of this work, with equity being our guide. Equity is a key driving force in learning renewal because students have different needs, and recovering from the pandemic will vary depending on the school district. As chair of the Governor's Rural Affairs Council, I've spoken with high school students in rural communities about their struggles with online learning due to a lack of access to quality broadband. And as chair of the Illinois Council on Women and Girls, I've heard from many girls throughout our state about the isolation from not being in school, how difficult it has been to ask their teachers and peers for help, and the impact that all of this has had on their self-esteem. Still, other students from urban and suburban communities have shared how they've had to work to help support their families or help take care of their younger siblings, or how distracting it has been to try to work in a household full of people. In other words, when we talk about learning renewal, the conversation is not just about academics, though obviously that's important. But this has been a tough year for our students. They have seen so much and experienced so much. And many of them were already living with anxiety and uncertainty in their lives even before this pandemic. I am excited that the P20 Learning Renewal Resource Guide focuses on the whole child and includes resources for social emotional learning so that our most vulnerable students will have access to trauma-informed support. Think about it. Students have lived with the anxiety of sick loved ones and are grieving the loss of family members. They have experienced economic upheaval in their families, some of them experiencing food insecurity perhaps for the very first time. And add to this the civil unrest in response to the racial injustice, and they're wondering why everyone does not have full access to equal justice under the law. There's so much for our children to process, and while this Learning Renewal Resource Guide, Learning Renewal Resource Guide, we will be better equipped to meet them where they are and help them to be their healthiest selves, and this in turn will help them learn. The pandemic is not over, but I am hopeful for the future of our children, and I look forward to our administration not only collaborating with stakeholders, but celebrating and sharing successes as we continue to recover. Now, I'm happy to introduce a real champion for education equity and one of the P20 Council Learning Renewal co-chairs, our State Superintendent of Education, Dr. Carmen Ayla.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Stratton. And I want to say thank you to our education community, to our teachers, our administrators, our custodians, our school nurses, our counselors. Thank you for all that you have done and continue to do for Illinois students during this pandemic. Thank you for your dedication to helping our students make it through this past year. With the influx of federal funding and the Learning Renewal Resource Guide, we are now presented with a unique opportunity to transform systems of learning for students, to reshape our new normal so that our students return to an education system that is more equitable, more individualized, and more responsive to their needs. We have almost crossed the threshold of having 100% of our school districts back to offering some in-person instruction, and we look forward to reaching fully in-person instruction statewide by Phase 5. This opportunity allows us to take a step back and dedicate focused attention to investing in learning renewal. With the help of more than 300 educators, students, and administrators from across the state, we created a roadmap for how our education system can emerge from this pandemic stronger, even with greater capacity to close gaps and achieve equity. The Learning Renewal Resource Guide outlines 12 strategies that can help serve as a starting point for local conversations about spending decisions. These 12 strategies fall into one of two areas, or two buckets: social emotional learning and academic growth. We very carefully reviewed and studied innovative ideas, practices, and initiatives from across the country to determine which ones could be replicated and implemented by our Illinois schools. We're not asking school leaders to tackle them all. Rather, we are encouraging our superintendents to consider their 3 to 5 biggest challenges locally and to focus on the strategies that align with those local needs. We encourage superintendents to get the community involved and to engage and strengthen partnerships with all stakeholders because, as they say, many hands make light work. And like many things in life, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. We have 852 separate, unique, special, and distinct school districts in Illinois. So what works for a rural district may not work for a suburban or an urban district, and vice versa. We share the same destination of learning renewal, but the road is going to look different for everyone. Take Chicago Public Schools as an example, the largest school district in our state. CPS implemented high-impact tutoring for nearly 3,000 underserved 9th and 10th grade students on the south and west sides. Students participated in small math tutoring groups for an hour every day. That hour every day helped to boost those students' academic and reduce math course failures by 1/2. Then there's Williamsfield School District, a small rural school district in Knox County that serves about 300 students in one building. Back in 2013, they decided to use online open source materials, many of which are free, instead of purchasing traditional textbooks. They used those savings to invest in technology and a technological infrastructure, including purchasing electronic devices for each student and creating a cutting-edge STEM program that otherwise would have been impossible. We look forward to hearing more stories like these, and we encourage our educators to submit their feedback, to submit their ideas on the P20 Council website. This opportunity may be once in a lifetime. Our preschool through 12th grade education system has $7.8 billion in federal funding to right the wrongs caused by the pandemic and to address the disproportionate impact on our low-income students and on our students of color. To right these wrongs, we will need to be bold, and we will need to work together. With this roadmap as our starting point, we will make it to our destination. And now I will turn things over to Dr. Jamila Jordan. Thank you.
Good afternoon. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here at South Elgin High School. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the governor, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, as well as my co-chairs. But I especially want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the early childhood community who really stood up during a very difficult time during the last year as part of the pandemic. As the governor mentioned, I serve as the executive director of the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development, and in that role we serve as a convener and coordinating body for our child and family serving state agency partners. So as part of the learning renewal efforts outlined by our governor, through partnerships and collaboration, the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development will provide leadership in the following areas: infant and early childhood mental health consultation, early intervention, and the development of an early childhood enrollment campaign. The pandemic has highlighted the need for increased social and emotional supports for Illinois' youngest children, their families, and other early childhood workforce members. The model for infant and early childhood mental health consultation recognizes that social and emotional development is the foundation for success in learning and in life. Illinois is one of the few states to offer infant and early childhood mental health consultation. The approach is relational, is strength-based, and individualized to support children, families, providers, and systems in diverse communities and settings. The Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development, in collaboration with the Illinois Head Start Association, the Illinois Association for Infant Mental Health, the Illinois Children's Mental Health Partnership, CHADA Caregiver Connections, the City of Chicago's Department of Family and Support Services, and our state agency partners will promote access to infant and early childhood mental health consultation across our child and family serving programs. There is a need within the state to increase the number of consultants. There is a need to, with the goal to reduce the wait time for providers and make it easier to access critical social emotional supports as we engage in our young children's learning recovery. Our efforts will promote trauma-informed social emotional response practices within communities, especially in those communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. A public awareness campaign will be developed in multiple languages to promote infant and early childhood mental health consultation to key stakeholders. Finally, GOECD plans to streamline the professional development for infant and early childhood mental health consultants, increasing the number of and availability of consultations. Developing a campaign, among other efforts, advances the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus Education and Workforce Equity Act, specifically the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation Act. The second initiative is related to early intervention, which supports the families of infants or toddlers with a disability or developmental delay. As a result of the pandemic, there is a need to address the challenges experienced in accessing technology to receive early intervention via telehealth services, and the need for culturally responsive materials for linguistically diverse families to assist them in understanding service delivery options. To support families to support their children in meeting their developmental milestones, the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development, in partnership with the Illinois Early Intervention Clearinghouse and the Department of Human Services Bureau of Early Intervention, will provide technology for early intervention telehealth and will facilitate the development of culturally responsive materials in multiple languages. In addition to these efforts, we envision as part of our learning recovery efforts that there will be preschool sessions. Finally, as a result of the pandemic, child enrollment and referrals are down across our state's early childhood mixed delivery system. GOECD will convene stakeholders to support the development of a statewide early childhood awareness and enrollment campaign. The campaign will promote the importance of and availability of early childhood programs that supports that are available to families. As part of this campaign and outreach effort, we plan to use a statewide text messaging platform for families to highlight the importance of early learning. We want Illinois' youngest children and their families back in their early care and education settings to provide the necessary systems of supports that will facilitate our youngest children's learning recovery. Thank you again for the opportunity to be with you today and to share our plan on behalf of the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development. At this time, it's my pleasure to bring to the podium the Honorable Representative Hirschauer, the representative of the 49th District.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. It is an honor to be here today at Storm Nation in U46 to speak with you about the pandemic's impact on our schools and families, and most importantly, to celebrate the opportunities we have to rebuild as we move towards that glimmering light at the end of the tunnel. Our families and our communities depend on the hard work, ingenuity, and energy of our educators, administrators, and school staff. For over a year, our educators have put their hearts and souls into crafting remote and hybrid lesson plans. They have learned new technologies to better serve their students and found creative ways to keep our kids engaged in this strange new normal. Many teachers juggled overseeing their own family's remote learning alongside creating and leading virtual learning experiences for their students. It has been a hard year, and I am grateful for the grit and adaptability of our teachers, administrators, and school staff. For Illinois families, this past year has been one of cobbled together childcare, balancing work with remote school schedules and basically hanging on by the skin of our teeth. My husband and I have been working from home and overseeing 3 different school schedules for our kiddos in kindergarten, 6th grade, and 8th grade. We are living this chaotic new normal right alongside all of you, and we understand the worry and fear that grips Illinois families. Are our children falling behind? How is the pandemic affecting their mental health? And how can we do better? As we make the welcome transition back to full-time in-person learning, we must focus on rebuilding and supporting our classrooms with resources to fill the achievement gap that has now become a chasm. I'm so happy to be here today with Governor Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, and our wonderful educational leaders in the official unveiling of the Learning Renewal Guide that will help us do just that, build back better. Through funding from the Federal CARES Act and guidance provided in the Learning Renewal Guide, our local schools stand to emerge from the pandemic better equipped to meet the varied needs of all students, especially our most vulnerable. With a focus on equity, the guide outlines tried and tested strategies to close achievement gaps, improve social-emotional supports, and address the immediate needs of students most set back by the pandemic. As a former educator and a current state legislator, I am honored to be a part of this collaborative process of rebuilding our public schools. We have an extraordinary opportunity to build back better with a strong focus on equity and social-emotional learning. I look forward to working with our local school districts to meet the unique needs of Illinois families. And with that, I would like to introduce my friend and colleague, the Honorable Senator Karina Villa.
Hello, everyone. Although I stand here as Senator Karina Villa, I have a more preferred title that I've had in my lifetime, and that was the title of Miss Villa, a school social worker. I worked as a school social worker for 15 years in severely underfunded school districts. In that time, I saw the care and compassion that educators, school board members, parents provided their children and the support that they offered for their futures. When the pandemic hit, how I wish I could have been there alongside with all of those teachers and parents, being there to comfort them and help them through these difficult times. I was there as the state rep and then as a state representative for them, listening to them as they were calling and letting our office know about their fears, about what was happening with their students, with their children, with their community. Teachers who called and said, Karina, how will I build a sense of community for my students? How will we make sure that our students are eating? How will we make sure that the parents are able to go to work? It was desperate times for sure. Now we are at a time where we're able to start turning that new page and looking forward while also remembering all of what happened in this last year, but also what has happened in the last many years in our underfunded school districts, like our wonderful and beautiful school district that we are in right now, U46. We have this opportunity to move forward, and this P20 guide is such an awesome first step for these school districts who have had to do for so long with so little. I want to highlight a few of those key points in the P20 guide. I want to talk about the social emotional learning. As a school social worker, you will know that this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I've spoken to pediatricians in the area who have said, Karina, students are coming to us, families are coming to us desperate because their children have really suffered so much during this time. I urge the school districts to look and see how this guide can help us move forward in providing assistance, not just for the students, but also professional development for the teachers who they themselves have gone through so much in this last year. I'm really excited to see how our champions, our heroes, our educators, bring us forth out of this dark time, bring forth our students out of this dark time into a new age, because we've learned so much during COVID. We've learned how to be resilient. We've learned new tricks, new ways of engaging students. Let's keep going and move forward. I'm so excited. Thank you all for this opportunity to be here with you all, and I would like to welcome Melissa Figueroa to speak next.
Good afternoon. I'm Melissa Figueroa. I'm here on behalf of Advance Illinois, a bipartisan nonprofit education policy advocacy organization. First, I'd like to thank Governor Pritzker and his team for inviting me here today to celebrate the launch of the Learning Renewal Resource Guide. After months of collaborative work with the governor's office and other state leaders, practitioners, and experts, on behalf of Advance Illinois, I am truly excited by the release of this guide and its ability to assist local leaders as they work to address their students' needs during this unprecedented time. We've already heard from the field how eager school and district leaders are for this vital information. Though we don't have statewide assessment data to help paint a fuller picture of the impact of the pandemic on academics, the data we do have begin to show the depth and breadth of the impact this crisis is having on Illinois students, from early childhood through post-secondary. The state has seen an estimated drop in enrollment of 35,822 students, or 1.9% of the prior year's enrollment. That represents nearly twice what the decline was projected to be. Kindergarten through third grade saw the steepest declines by far, as much as 20 to 50% in some areas, which is especially concerning in light of how important those early years are for children's development. At the other end of the educational continuum, overall post-secondary enrollment in Illinois dropped by over 5% this year, a larger decline than the national average. As those who spoke before me have mentioned, qualitative and quantitative data alike suggest that students are facing trauma and toxic stress as a result of the pandemic and its impacts on families. So in addition to working to support accelerated academic recovery and growth for students, schools will have to find new and creative ways of truly supporting the whole child. And as we're grateful for the heroic efforts of educators and school and district leaders who work tirelessly to meet the extraordinary needs of our students, which definitely are a source of light and hope, we also know that the hard reality is that recovery and renewal will likely take years. While we are eager to go back to normal, we must remember that learning renewal should be viewed as a marathon, not a sprint. For educators and district leaders still enmeshed in reopening plans, and knowing that many districts do not have deep administrative resources, we are delighted that the P20 Council, under the leadership of Deputy Governor Jesse Ruiz, and with truly outstanding support from the Boston Consulting Group, and the involvement of hundreds of experts and practitioners from across the state, is now releasing this resource guide, which we hope and expect will be user-friendly, just as it is substantive and helpful in supporting local leaders in making the best possible use of local, state, and federal funds. Given the caliber and richness of the resource guide, this team effort also puts Illinois in the vanguard nationally when it comes to supporting schools and colleges to rise to this moment. So again, thank you, Governor Pritzker, Deputy Governor Ruiz, State Superintendent Ayla, Brian Durham, Ginger Ostro, Eric Zarnikow, Ernesto Matias, and Beth Swanson. It has been an honor to work alongside you, and we are incredibly lucky to have you at the helm during this unique and challenging moment in time. I'm now going to ask the governor to come back up and join us for Q&A.
Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions from members of the media. Good afternoon.
Just to clarify, the $7 billion that you're getting from the federal government, the entire amount is going to go to fund renewal efforts in K-12 education or K-12 in general?
All of those dollars, $7 billion, were allocated by the federal government, by the Congress, and as proposed by in the American Rescue Plan, as well as in a plan that was passed in December, a portion of it, all to education throughout the United States, but directly to school districts. And so that $7 billion is in fact focused on things, all of it focused on learning renewal. That's the purpose of it. And all of it focused on things like what kinds of summer programs are necessary, what kinds of tutoring may be necessary, providing social work in schools for kids who may need some extra assistance, mental health support, and so on, all of which may be effects of the pandemic.
You were on a phone call with the White House yesterday that also discussed how to spend this money. Is that correct? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, the call that I was on was mostly about vaccines. There's also, this was the pandemic response group that the White House has put forward, led by Jeff Zients. The governors also have raised questions about how best to use some of these funds to make sure that they're used properly in districts across their states. But let me be clear, these dollars are in addition to the dollars that the state of Illinois already provides to schools, in addition to the dollars that local school districts provide. This is to make sure that we're bringing kids back to the kind of level of learning that they had before the pandemic, and to try to focus on those kids getting on the same path that they had been on prior to COVID-19.
And speaking of children and COVID, with the studies from Pfizer suggesting that the vaccine is 100% effective on teens 12 to 15, should we be recommending that students all be vaccinated before requiring even before going back to school in the fall?
Well, those studies have not been verified yet. That was an announcement made by Pfizer, and so as soon as we have those studies verified, that no doubt will affect who would get vaccinated.
Now, obviously, we've been seeing the number of cases rising, unfortunately, and at least in the city, it seems like a lot of the rise is being driven by younger people. Should the state open up availability to all ages earlier than it is already, determined to?
Well, the state already has. So we have a date for everybody in the state beginning April 12th, every adult, everybody that is 16 years of age and over, that they may make an appointment to get vaccinated. And then prior to that, I realize we're on March 31st today. Prior to that, we've also opened it up in areas of the state where they've seen a lax amount of demand. In other words, there are areas of the state where there are fewer people signing up for appointments than you might expect. They're not filling every appointment that's being put forward. And so we want to make sure we get every dose into every arm that we possibly can across the state as quickly as possible. So in those areas, they are opening up, Sangamon County being one example of that, to everyone 16 years of age and over. I'm concerned, I will be honest with you, that the city of Chicago seems to want to delay beyond April 12th. In terms of opening up to everybody. I think that they will want to do that sooner than they are currently planning to, but they get their doses directly from the federal government, are making some different decisions there. But let me just be clear, we should be getting every dose into every arm that we possibly can, beginning as soon as we possibly can. We are getting more doses right now. We are getting many more doses than we were even last week. That's a great thing, and we want to make sure that we're running people through these vaccination centers as quickly as possible. People are making appointments as soon as they possibly can, and we're going to do everything we can to get Illinois to a place where we get to herd immunity as fast as we could.
The CDC signed an extension to the eviction moratorium scheduled now through June 30th. Does this apply to Illinois as well?
It applies to the entire nation, as I understand.
And you probably know that the Wisconsin Supreme Court has ruled that the governor's emergency orders requiring masks usage there are unlawful. Are you planning on extending the emergency order here, and are you concerned about feelings on that?
Well, the Wisconsin Supreme Court all along has been hyper-political. It is a Republican-controlled Supreme Court that seems to want to battle against the best advice of our Centers for Disease Control, against the best mitigations that we know work. That's not a course that we want to follow in the state of Illinois. We want to keep people healthy and safe, and we're doing that with the mitigations that we have in place. Masks are necessary. Right now, masks are necessary. When we can get enough people vaccinated, when we can get to a point where things are fully open and we have herd immunity, we can we'll be able to, what's the right term, doff our mask, but take it off. But I want to be clear, right now we have a little over a third of our adult population is vaccinated, which is terrific. And over 70% now of our seniors, 65 and over, are vaccinated, and that's terrific too. But many, many people are not vaccinated, and we want to just make sure that we're keeping everybody safe as long as possible. Thank you.